Pledge, if everyone would rise, please. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Dive right into 1.02, approval of agenda. Do we have a motion?
I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
AJ Bird, second.
AJ.
Hello.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the agenda? Hearing and seeing nothing, we will proceed with a vote, please.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Angie. Angie, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Nick,
Yes.
Kim Marie,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, and we've got a special segment tonight for our three incumbents that didn't have to go through an election, and I'll hand things over, I guess, to Andrew. Going to lead them through their administration of the oath of office.
I will. I think it probably would be good just for the public meeting just to note that because we were not required to have an election, we can go ahead and move forward with the oath of office. If we were required to have an election, then we would have to wait until the July election in order to move forward. But because we have the same number of candidates and equal to number of positions open, we were not required to have an election this year.
So we don't have to wait then until the election that I think got moved to June now. So
Correct.
proceed with the oath for our three returning members.
So if I could ask Angie, AJ, and Kim Marie to stand. This may be awkward, but we can do this.
Okay.
Okay, and to raise your right hand. Good job, everyone. And if you will repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm
I do
I
solemnly
swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that
that I support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
And the
and
Constitution.
the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of school director
the
the
duties
duties
of
of school
director
director
in and for the Liberty 53 School District
in and
and
for
for
Liberty 53
Missouri School District,
County of Clay,
County of Clay,
State of Missouri,
State of
State of-
Missouri,
to the best of my ability according to law.
to the best of my ability according to
law.
Congratulations on being the first video conferencing oath of office administration in I think the history of Liberty Public Schools.
Thank you.
Woohoo!
maybe the history of the state, yes?
Maybe, yes. So there is attached in Word docs the oath of office that each of you just took. At some point, I will need a signed copy of that to file. Okay?
We'll do so. Okay.
You may have been the first. Hopefully you are the last and only to ever. At least for this reason.
I concur.
All right, so we get into our consent agenda here, and bear with me, my Wi-Fi is got some hiccups tonight. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. We have a motion on the consent agenda.
I move the board approve consent agenda items 3.01 through 3.06.
Second.
Any discussion on consent agenda and the motion? Seeing and hearing none, let's proceed with a vote, please.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kim Marie,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right. That brings us all the way to 4.01, and this is report to administration. So I will hand things over to Dr. Tucker to lead us through these.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just as an aside, if you will recall back in March, we were planning and prepping for a regular monthly board meeting, and then things took a left turn. And so as it relates to our administration reports in March at our regular meeting, we really just kind of walked you through a real-time update rather than providing our typical administration reports. Having connected with you through our daily updates as well as our study session on numerous occasions, we've opted this evening to try to get back to business as usual as it relates to our administration reports. So early last week, we communicated that to our cabinet, academic services, HR, operations, and finance. And so this evening in board docs, you have the more traditional administrative report uploaded for you. So we're going to go around the Zoom screen and have our administrators relay what's going on in their world. And so we're going to start off this evening under 4.01 with our academic services report, and you're going to hear from Dr. Dixon Seahorn.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to share with you just some highlights of what's been going on in academic services since the last time we convened. You will see referenced in the agenda item details that for our report, we wanted to share with you that we do have guidelines that are now formally in place as it pertains to video conferencing. Our goal being that we want to keep online conferences between teachers and students secure and safe at all times. And so we did make some revisions to those guidelines, including some additional security measures that could and should be taken with regards to Zoom, as there were some concerns that were conveyed to us through the Let's Talk portal in reference to that. So we have made those changes, and those guidelines are available on our district's website and also available as a link for you. With reference to senior class updates, just wanted to share with you that we're continuing to look at alternate dates for commencement. We do know that we're currently under stay-at-home orders, and so therefore the original May 17th commencement date has been canceled. However, we are exploring some alternate dates of June 14th as well as July 19th. And so we will continue to work with families and communicating with them the most updated information that we have, so that we can do everything possible to ensure we have some type of face-to-face commencement ceremony for our 2020 graduates. Also have mentioned in reference to prom that that's been canceled as a May event. We're looking to schedule sometime in July. And also we're exploring the opportunity for some type of virtual academic awards recognition ceremony for sometime at the end of this month going into May. And then with respect to the baccalaureate for our Liberty North and Liberty High School students, we're looking to host some type of combined event later in the summer so that they will be celebrated and recognized for their achievements. With respect to grading and proficiency reporting guidelines, we have sent out a letter to parents making them aware of what those guidelines will be now that we find ourselves in COVID-19 culture. And so that has been communicated to them. And we're also currently working on some frequently asked questions that teachers and parents may have. And so we hope to have that document out the end of this week, going into next week. Another thing we wanted to share with you is that we do have now a formal executive summary of the Liberty Public Schools online learning survey that was disseminated to our families, to students, to teachers. We were able to glean some valuable feedback from that survey. And so we have shared those results with you in more detail. We're very happy to announce that over 4,000 survey respondents participated in that survey to give us that valuable feedback. I did mention just a moment ago, frequently asked questions as it pertains to grading and proficiency reporting. We also are working on an overview frequently asked questions document as it pertains to extended school closure, how we'll handle end of the school year procedures and processes that normally happen. For example, how families could potentially retrieve student belongings, the process that teachers will go through to close out their classrooms. So we're working on that right now and hope to have that out very soon. Another thing we wanted to share with you that is a recent development and actually is an outcome of the survey that was disseminated to our families and staff is an event and a day that we're very excited about. And we've called it Thrive on 5. And so that will launch on Friday, May 1st. And basically, it is a virtual experience for all students pre-K through 12 to participate in on Fridays of each week, again, starting May 1st. And it'll serve as a personalized learning day for students where they will be able to explore interests on their own as it pertains to our LPS graduate profile. And so you will see in our academic services document, you'll see the links to each one of those choice boards for the purposes of those personalized learning days on Fridays. And we start as early as pre-K. And we are so excited about that. And it goes all the way through, of course, up to grade 12. So we are working on the letter that will go out to families in reference to that. We've already communicated this to staff. And so we're looking forward to this being launched officially on Friday, May 1st. Also wanted to draw your attention to agenda item details where you will see LPS summer school board updates for spring of 2020. We have provided approximately 6 choices to be considered with respect to what summer school could look like for us, as well as we've included the peak program evaluation, as well as an overview for our student services department in review of the year. So those are the highlights of what we wanted to share with you this evening, and we'll open it up if you perhaps had any questions for any of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon Seahorn. Any questions of Andrea, Jeanette, or Julie this evening?
Not a question exactly, but I had a chance to plow through the summary results of those surveys that you just talked about, Andrea. And I think it would have been an easy thing to miss that opportunity. And the fact that you all sent that out after just first couple of weeks there to kind of gauge where people's experiences were, I thought that was a smart move and provided. I was amazed by the amount of feedback you got. So thanks for pushing that through so that you could then figure out what the next iteration and the next iteration of this time looks like. And obviously, some of the things that I saw in there line up with the Thrive 5.
Good feedback. Thank you for that, David. Anyone else before we move on from academic services? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dixon Seahorn and the entire team. Only a few of them are represented here this evening, but directors continuing to work remotely, of course, representing our building principals, teachers and staff that are all at home working remotely as well. So it's been quite the journey, and we're near that halfway mark as we look to the end of the school year on May 22nd. Next up then, under 4.02 would be our finance report. Ms. Cindy Sullivan, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. Good evening, everyone. In my report this month, I tried to give you a overview of everything that's going on with the current year, next year, and the CARES Act and the relief. And on Thursday, when I wrote this, we give it a couple of days, and then I have some changes to update, of course. That happened yesterday. So I want to draw your attention specifically to the current year, FY20, where I indicated that no withholds had been made. Well, yesterday that changed. Late yesterday afternoon, the governor announced that he would be withholding approximately $47 million from this year's state budget. And in that $47 million, about $23.6 million of it related to K-12 education. The first piece of that I wanted to talk about was $15 million of that was for the foundation formula, but it was in relation to House Bill 2014, which I also talked about in here, which was the supplemental budget. So what that is, and it's a little bit of an explanation, so if you'll bear with me, I'll try to explain what that means. That 15 million was earmarked in the supplement to be doled out to schools as a correction for the FY19 formula payment. So what happens every year at the end of the year, schools turn in their average daily attendance and it becomes weighted in conjunction with all other districts' average daily attendance. And then in November, after they've trued up everybody's attendance from the prior year, they make a correction. So we are asked, and we do this because we're a growing district, we estimate our average daily attendance and submit that to be paid on because we're growing, so we don't want to be paid on the prior 2 years average daily attendance, but some districts don't do that. So that causes a correction one way or the other for all districts as they redistribute the formula when they true up that WADA. This year for FY19, the calculation was increased by about 3,000 pupils. So that made everybody's payment change. Ours went down and the distribution then was redistributed over more hours. So everybody got hurt by that because the SAT then went down from 6308 to 6291. So long story short, then in the current year, the governor put in a supplemental to correct that and give that money back to people. So it's not money we had, it's not money we budgeted for, and it's not money we were counting on. It would have been nice to have. It would have been about $450,000 for our district to get us back up to the formula SAT of 6308, which is what we were paid out on originally throughout the whole year. But he cut that. He's reappropriating that somewhere else, so we are not going to get that correction. You won't see it affect our budget. I hadn't budgeted for it, so it's not really a loss, but it's not a gain either. So that's where the majority of that $23 million comes from that cut. $7 million of it comes from transportation, and that will affect us. It's about $7,700 a month for the remaining 3 months. So we will see $23,000 less in transportation money. We haven't been getting a whole lot of transportation money anyway, so that's a small hit for us. The rest of the $23 million are in programs that we don't get money from. So overall, we did not take a big hit on that cut, on that withhold. My fear is with the state of the state revenues right now, that there could potentially be another withhold if the revenues keep dropping as they have in April. And we've been keeping pretty close tabs on that. I believe for fiscal year to date that state collections are only up 1.15%. So as April continues on with the decrease in sales tax and the extension of income tax payments, that is very likely that we will be in the negative as compared to next year as far as revenues go. So we still have 2.5 months to go to finish out this year, and I don't think it's going to be pretty. Then next year, you saw what we're thinking about, and if we're withholding right now, I can't imagine that our state of our budget next year will be much better. I do know that the legislative people are back in session on April 27th, and they have indicated that they will be focusing on the state budget. And I've also heard that they are reworking some of the bills that have already been put forward to cut some of the funds out of that to around $700 million. So I don't know what that will do to the education funding, but I can't feel that we will be helped by any of that when they come together on the 27th to push that budget through. And as I indicated in my report, when they do push a budget through, I don't know what kind of confidence we will have in that as well. So we'll go with what they give us, and I'll present that budget to you as hopefully they get it done by May 8th, so we can have at least an idea of what they're proposing that we can get to you for the preliminary budget in May. We will still try to keep the expenditure budgets as flat as we can. Not, telling everybody that this is not going to be a year to spend like no other. We want things to be relatively essential and necessary, and be very cautious with what we're spending. That's going to be the message that we give to people. So that's really the update I have on where we're at. Not good news, and I don't think we'll have good news for the next few months when we come together to talk about the finances, but we'll keep tabs on it and keep updating you as these things come across and as we know more. And we can just go with what we've got and be very careful over the next couple of years as we're spending and budgeting. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to take them.
Any questions of Cindy? Okay, seeing none. Thank you,
Hey.
Cindy, for that
Sorry.
update. Oh, no, there you
Couldn't
go.
get the mute off fast enough. Cindy was
Go
such a positive shining light with that wonderful information. No, it's so when you go back to the transportation piece, obviously they're taking dollars out for the next 3 months, but is it fairly limited as far as an impact? Because I'm assuming our expenses in the transportation department have gone down.
Right, it is very, yeah. The only thing that they're spending in transportation, obviously, is salaries and benefits, but we have a couple of ALC, which is the transport of students with special needs. We're paying a little bit of that because some are still being taken to therapy and things like that. So other than that, there are really no expenditures from the transportation side.
Okay. And then I noticed in the in your summary, Cindy, up at the top, the collections being behind based on timing of pilot revenue.
Yeah.
Is there any thoughts on your side? Is those not going to come in, or are they going to come in as expected? Probably.
As far as I know, when I have been talking to the people at the county, we're still expecting them to come in as planned. The pilot payment, the largest pilot payment last year, came in right at the end of March. So they've been behind on every payment this year, I think, just because of the reduction in hours that they're working. Every time I've reached out, they indicate, yes, it's still coming, it's still coming. So I don't have any belief that it's not.
Cool.
That's exact. It's that large pilot payment is why the collection cycle is showing a lesser rate.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Cindy then before we move on? You may recall Governor Parsons had some preliminary withholdings, I think to the tune of about $180 million initially, and we weathered that as far as pre-K through grades 12. I think higher ed got a little bit harder hit on that first wave. And again, as Cindy shared, that information was just pushed out yesterday in terms of the current withholdings impacting K-12. So we'll send you a copy of the finance memo that Desi put forward today that traps all of those pieces. So again, thank you for providing that update, Cindy. Next up then would be Dr. Vogelard, or 4.03 Human Resources Report.
Thank you very much. We have uploaded a report here from Human Resources. A couple items I'll tease out of that. One is related to Dr. Westfall's report announcing that the New Teacher Innovations Institute is scheduled right now, at least, for August 12th through August 14th. And she is gangbusters on preparing that, which is always the feedback I get from our new teachers that we hire every year, is that it's phenomenally well done first impression of Liberty Public Schools. And I can't thank Dr. Westfall enough for what she and her team does to really pull that experience together for our new teachers. So that's August 12th through the 14th, if you want to tentatively plop that in your calendars. Also got an update in there regarding staffing. Obviously, in light of Ms. Sullivan's financial picture, we are scrutinizing attrition when a position leaves. Do we need to backfill it? And in some cases, we obviously do. Obviously, Liberty Oaks principal is a great example. You have to have a head principal for an elementary school. So we're going to backfill that, and we're going through and really scrubbing those opportunities to seize some savings through attrition versus backfilling those positions. I want to publicly commend the work that Dr. Moore and Dr. Dixon Seahorn specifically are doing. They manage very large teams where the largest slice of the pie in terms of our refill opportunities come from, and both of them are working with teams of people to really scrutinize and scrub that information for HR. So I appreciate that work. Final thing I want to tease out of the report is with regard to the Grow Your Own initiative. I've given some updates along this path. The deadline for applications was the end of February. We only had 2 applicants that responded during that deadline, and in that time frame, we also got a report back from Teach KC. They do a survey of our high school students and then deliver that data to us of the high school students that indicate an interest in teaching as a profession. And so we were able to drill down based on that data and identify some people that we had not heard from. So we extended the deadline to apply to May 1st, and then principals and the steering committee, which Mr. Rosecrans and Dr. Dixon Seahorn head that steering committee, are making a personal touch to those families to make sure that no one is missing out on an opportunity to express interest because they are just unaware of that program. So I wanted to tease that out as well. There's other information in that report. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those questions, but those pieces, because of their uniqueness in terms of a deviation from our typical information we provide, I wanted to tease those out tonight. Any questions?
Anything for Dr. Vogelaar? Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Vogelaar. Next up then is Mr. Anderson 4.04, our operations report.
Yes, thank you. Just a few items I wanted to highlight tonight. First, and this is a follow-up to our last meeting, kind of on the whole matter of patrolling and monitoring our facilities. We really stepped that up over the last few weeks using our security team. And there have been a couple, maybe 2 or 3, that we've had to kind of swing in and shoo them away. But for the most part, and this is a little deceiving because I've been keeping an eye on it as well, for the most part, there are families on site. And so we've come up and have a report of all those interactions we've had with folks on facilities. And in many, if not most, of those cases where there's more than 1 or 2 individuals, it's one family kind of enjoying the field or the space. Our meal services, I believe you received an update today. So as of today, we have provided 42,000 meals to students within the community. We've also delivered 400 meal kits in partnership with Harvesters and Pleasant Valley Baptist Church. And so that's really gone very well, and really needed to kind of thank especially the folks in nutrition services, warehouse distribution guys, and then our transportation folks as well. Couple other projects that we're working on. The operations team is working on kind of scaling up the staff a little bit. As you know, we've been paying all of our personnel, and some of them have been reporting to work. We're looking to try to scale that up a little bit more and get more of our folks engaged. And so they've developed some plans to do that. Have been in consultation with Tom Capps to make sure we're within the orders provided by Clay County and KCMO, and then also making sure that we're adhering to all the distancing and cleaning of hands and masks when appropriate. And so just want to let you know that you'll probably see more of our staff out and about in the coming weeks, just getting work done as we prepare, as we roll into the summer. They are also working on a reentry plan, and Dr. Tucker may reference this as well, but we have a group of folks kind of starting the process of looking at what it will look like to get back into school in session. And so we have Kathy Ellermeyer with Health Services and Steve Aldrich. We have the HR Director of Operations, Christelle Morgan. and a few other folks are going to start putting together a plan for what that might look like. There's a couple of great resources out there that they're consulting with right now. And so we just felt it was a good time to begin that process, since we have a team working on that actively. And then last, a couple updates related to construction. One within the construction report that's attached. If you open that up, you'll see the first kind of perspective of the 2 bids that were just accepted as part of consent related to the 800s and the work at the atrium for Liberty High School, and some pretty good architectural renderings to kind of give you a sense of what those spaces will look like. And I think we're very close to kicking that work off. We'll probably wait another week or two, but we're in a position now that we feel quite confident that the PAC, the theater project at Liberty High School, is on track to be ready for occupancy for the start of school in August. And so we're going to give that another week or so. Once we feel a little bit better, then we're going to kick off work with those other projects, because they're very much integrated. And then last, we're going to kind of queue up here in a second a video tour of the Liberty High School performing arts space. Really wanted to give a special thanks to the crew at Niles, Darren and Jeff, along with the project team, the architects, construction folks, April Adams and Aaron Money. We were out there yesterday around between 4 and 5:30 yesterday afternoon. And so they quickly threw this video together that will give you a pretty decent perspective of how the work's coming along. And we'll go ahead and roll the tape. Maybe.
Good afternoon, I'm Archie Smith with Universal Construction Company. We're the construction management firm that's overseeing the new Performing Arts Center for Liberty Public Schools. We're here to tour the new facility, and I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to give you a backstage look at our new exciting Performing Arts Center.
What we wanted to do with this building was using the precast, taking tones and materials that we saw that were used on the Fieldhouse edition. We wanted to try to make sure that wrapped around to this edition here. Very much of a collegiate look almost, and so that's where we started our inspiration for this exterior. We are in what will be the stagecraft room. So you'll notice we've got really tall ceilings. This will match what our stage height is, so that we can create all of our scenery, all of the different production items. We've utilized really large overhead doors, and that way it's very easy to migrate those scenery pieces from this room. And then what we've got right over here on this side will be the new orchestra room. Obviously sound and acoustics are going to be a very critical component. It's a little echoey right now as we're still in construction. But we've got the high ceilings that will have a dropped cloud. We're going to have wall panels that will help to deflect the sound here within this orchestra room. The room here that we have just stepped in is the drama classroom. It will also serve as the green room during production. So we've got a full kitchen area that can be used for production, being able to feed the crew. And then also what you're not seeing quite yet is there will be a makeup counter and mirrors on 2 of these walls here. Next space we're going to be walking into will be the band room, and that will be able to hold the full band class and marching band itself. You'll notice again the very high ceilings and the acoustic clouds that have been positioned into space. And then again, we'll have the acoustic curtain that wraps around the perimeter of this room to help with those acoustics. What has not been installed yet will be a fully retractable wall, skyfold wall. And so when that is installed, we'll be able to retract that fully down, subdivide this space into 2 rooms. On the second floor, what you're starting to see are the inner workings of our rehearsal rooms. So those will all have this glass storefront facade that allows for visibility in, but also students are able to stay in contact of who's coming out in the corridors. We are now in the vocal classroom. We really worked very heavily with the faculty as well as the Board of Education as we were designing this building. We know that this is a very critical addition for the high school. And this is really the most amazing view as you start to step up. During the normal school day, this area will also serve an expansion point of the dining capacity. So students will constantly be in flux through here. But right now we're walking into the balcony level here of the new auditorium. The full auditorium will seat just under 800 patrons. We really wanted to incorporate a very large stage that had the opportunity for fly space for all of the sets and curtains that will be applied here. What you're seeing also behind me covered by a lot of this woodwork here, the full orchestra pit. You're looking at the stage, so this is your vantage point as you're starting to imagine when this is in full completion. This is the grand lobby space that we looked at from up above, and this will be the continuation and that connection into the existing high school that we've got right here behind me. And we were given this great opportunity to create this protected outdoor courtyard area. So what you're seeing behind me is the formwork for our outdoor classroom stairs, and then this will all be connected with new stairs and ramps.
We're actually finishing this building in 2 phases. The first part of the tour that you saw, all of the band, choral, orchestra classrooms are scheduled to be done early July of 2020. The last area that we focused on, the Performing Arts Center, is looking like it will wrap up right around the start of the school year.
We can't thank our community enough for believing in this project and investing in probably what's going to be one of the best high school performing arts centers in the state.
Thank you for your continued support of the department and everything you do for LPS.
Thank you.
Now, if you notice that 6-foot 2x4 between Aaron and Dr. Adams that I put between them to make sure they observed proper distancing. The only thing I would just say, kind of to wrap that up, is what's kind of not shared in that message is, one, it's just a great and exciting space. It's really going to be a game changer for that building and really interesting in a lot of different ways. But as a reminder for those maybe watching from home, this is kind of the last major piece to that $49 million bond issue that was passed in 2018. I think 82% of the community got behind it. There have been so many people involved with all these projects, but especially in this fine arts space where we had that team of folks related to that program that really got involved and influenced in significant ways the design of that building, along with, of course, all the staff, the fine arts staff, Dr. Adams and her leadership. So just really proud of how all that came together and all the folks that were involved. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson? Thank you for pulling that virtual tour together so quickly. Any questions of Steve?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're talking about budget here. Just as a reminder for me at least, the budget for the Atrium 800s renovation, is that coming out of the bond issue or is that a separate line item?
Partially, a significant chunk of those 2 projects will be funded out of the last parts of the bond dollars. And some of those dollars are monies that were accumulated through an interest earn off of the monies that were invested after we first pulled them down. So most of the money's, yes, off of the bond issue.
Perfect. And then Steve, I know you mentioned that in the report, we've got a couple of other locations are going to open up for nutrition services to hand out lunches. Remind me what those locations are.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that. So as of Monday, Donovan and Warren Hills will be up and running to serve. So we'll have 4 school sites, and Monday through Friday. If the hours are on the website, you can get to the hours there when they're open. But Monday through Friday for about an hour, hour and a half, those sites will be open to distribute meals to the community.
Perfect. Thanks.
Other questions for the operations report? Okay, thank you, Steve. The last item then under admin reports this evening are a few additions to mine that I've submitted for you. Just to kind of go back to the month of March, last time we met, we were talking about an initial 2-week closure that then got extended and then again extended for the remainder of the year. So can't express enough our appreciation to all of our community, be it students, parents, staff, the Board of Education, certainly for everything that you've done to help navigate this transition to learning at home. Certainly have had a lot of successes. We've also had a lot of challenges, and again, appreciate the solicitation of feedback from our community just to be able to improve our processes even during a time of a pandemic. With that said, part of that transition was that flex learning model that we put in place with our strategic plan that then has evolved and resulted in our submission to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education of our alternative method of instruction proposal. So DESE's received that, and we look forward to continuing to work that even into next year as we anticipate having kind of a dual approach. What does learning face-to-face look like in a classroom environment, and how do we prepare for the possible resurgence of the pandemic or some other type of disruption that causes us to further need to lean on virtual learning and online learning environments. This week we do have our coffee with the community, and so Mr. Ackerman and I will be working on that tomorrow, and then that will be available on Thursday. We've solicited some questions for that as well. So we look forward to sharing a little bit of an update at our Coffee with the Community event, albeit in a little different format this month. The other thing I would share is that albeit we've been adjusting to navigating this pandemic and learning from home, we've not forgotten about our vision, our graduate profile, or our strategic plan. And that we've been talking about that, visiting with our consultant, Scott Fuller, virtually. But then at the same time, we know that all of those 22 plans that we've worked diligently to put in place and we have moving, we probably need to pause, reassess, rethink through a new set of lenses. And that being, what does it look like in this new environment that we're navigating presently? But then how does that impact our new normal? And so we're going to begin those conversations and bring that to the Board of Education, as well as suggestions and recommendations. Keep in mind, when we embarked on setting up the strategic plan, our desire was to approach it by being a lot more agile and a lot more flexible. And we've had a crash course in agile here the last several weeks, but we do think that that has proven to be a benefit, and that we were setting the stage for that culture and that mindset and that conversation, and allowing us to be a little bit more flexible during these unique times. So we're also excited on the same hand as to what that will result in. And so the adage, why waste a crisis? We certainly think that this will allow us to be able to move things forward and thinking differently, and kind of changing our mindset in some ways toward what could be. With that said, we're continuing our work with the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation in and around real world learning. There are several components of our strategic plan that look to elevate or scale up those market value assets. Greatly appreciate Colleen Jones and the two career navigators, Dustin Solers and Tim Anderson at Liberty High School and Liberty North, who have kept students engaged in real world learning activities and experiences, even while they're sheltered in place at home, and that many businesses have flipped those internship experiences to doing just what we're doing this evening in terms of facilitating some type of a virtual experience. And so we're grateful for our career navigators for assisting with that. We're going to continue that work into the summer, into next year, as we look to ensure that all of our learners have a market value asset upon completion of high school. The last thing that I would share is that we could not be where we are at without our network and partners. I've shared this before, but I feel the need to do it again, whether it's working closely with our community partners here in our area, Liberty Hospital, William Jewell College, the City of Liberty, the City of Kansas City, Clay County Health Department, but then also working closely with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, as well as assisting with the Governor's Education Advisory Committee. So leaning on those individuals as well as other districts, we've shared the work that we're doing in our district, but then also we've been able to borrow ideas that other districts and other organizations are utilizing as well. As Mr. Anderson shared, that network or those partners will be increasingly valuable as we begin to pivot to thinking about reentry. What does reentry look like? Whether it's identified sometime during the summer or maybe even a little bit later into the fall, as we think about transitioning to having kids back face-to-face, whether it's summer school, our extended school year for our special education students, or that restart in August. And so we're thinking about all of those pieces, and you can anticipate seeing those reentry plans being brought forward. The other thing I would share with that is those decisions and plans put in place will not be made in isolation or just with those community partners, but also in consultation with the Center for Disease Control guidelines, as well as health departments from and around our region. That is the big driving piece as that all clear is issued, or some of those restrictions are eased up on, hopefully sooner than later, but we'll continue to relay that as we learn more. With that said, we'd certainly open it up for any questions that the board may have of me this evening.
Yeah, maybe directly for you, Dr. Tucker, or maybe somebody else in the cabinet, but just maybe talk through briefly the how we're approaching emotional well-being of two areas, right? Students, obviously, and then certainly our staff and teachers as well.
Great question. And so that was something we identified early on a lot of fronts. Obviously, this being a traumatic experience in and of itself for many people, students in particular, but as you mentioned, the adults in the organization as well. So whether it's being confined to a home in which maybe there are some issues at home, or maybe there are some issues that a student was dealing with prior to that then is exacerbated by not being able to be around, friends, peers, and so forth. So our counselors and social workers have worked very hard at trying to stay connected with students that we already knew might be struggling. But then on top of that, really being able to leverage some of the pieces we've had in place all along and repurposing, for example, Sprigio. We were talking not too long ago in a meeting, in a conversation, and it was one of our board members' suggestions to be able to take Sprigio, and while it's typically used for bullying, why not leverage that as an opportunity for both students as well as staff to be able to self-report or report on a friend who might be struggling with depression or stress or suicidal ideation. Obviously, your first call is, if it's that dire, call 911, but at the same time, we want to be able to connect our students and our staff with the appropriate person at the high school, be it a counselor or an administrator at the middle level, the elementary, and then with our staff, funnel them to our human resources department. So those are just a few examples. The other thing that I would share is our employee assistance program that we have through our benefits, and working through HR to be able to link counselors, professional counselors with staff that might have an issue or might be working through a concern that they have. Anything to add on that front, Dr. Vogelaar, from your end?
No, you touched on pretty much everything. Our department is also working to train our leaders, reminding them to check in regularly and just kind of assess how they're doing, and then and giving them the resources to be responsive. If they were to pick up anything in those routine engagements with their direct reports.
How about from academic services? Anything to add to that question?
I would just add what you said about Sprigio. I appreciate that that's still been active, and it's actually been utilized a few times at the secondary level. Even just today, getting some feedback from the administrators that they were working on some issues and just taking care of kids and families. So I appreciate the fact that we have publicized that so people can still know that it's there as a resource.
And I think to kind of sum it up as well, you saw some of this reflected in our survey data as we were gauging from students how they were doing, right? Overwhelmed, somewhat overwhelmed, or I'm doing fine, kind of those categories, and how the data shared their perspectives. I think it's important to note that there's a sweet spot in all of this, be it the academic work, how much is too much, how much is not enough, the amount of time spent both on the student side, on the employee side, knowing that we have extremes, and so we want to try to focus in on the middle there. The other thing I would share, two pieces, one of which is that those students that perhaps were not struggling in a traditional school environment that now have shifted to an online environment, we're seeing that they're being challenged in that transition to learning from home and working remotely or virtually. So that's been something we've been working to navigate as well. The other thing I would end with would be the importance of our classroom teachers, even in a virtual environment, emphasizing and leading with the importance of relationships, checking on kids, seeing how they're doing, albeit that student may have been great on March 24th. As time has progressed, we've had layoffs of some people in our community. We've had food insecurity. We've had other issues that have come up, the loss of loved ones for health reasons, and the inability to grieve like you traditionally would, and trying to unpack that and uncover how to navigate that during these unique times. These are all conversations that we're having throughout the system, albeit there's not a tremendous amount of visibility to it because it happens one-on-one, or it happens in conversation with the student or in conversation with the staff person. So I appreciate you highlighting that particular area of work in our district.
Yeah, no, thank you all for doing that, taking the lead on that.
Just to follow up on that, with my own kids, I can't tell you how many times I have heard teachers on calls and leading with, how's everyone doing? Let's just check in. And that has really been the forefront of what I have heard teachers doing with kids. And I just appreciate that focus, because I think it's probably even more important for us to keep that touch point.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Anything else before we turn it back over to Mr. Rothman? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right, so we are on 5.01, the temporary suspension of board policies. We've got two policies here, one with respect to the board organizational meeting and then public participation at board meetings, which is difficult at best under the circumstances. So we had put this on the agenda for discussion to temporarily suspend both of these given the unusual circumstances we're in. Dr. Tucker, what would you add to that?
So on both of these policies, what we've done is we've highlighted the language that we're looking at putting pause to or suspending temporarily. As we saw earlier in our meeting and swearing in our officers, we typically follow that with the swearing in of the positions, the president and the vice president. So we've sworn in our members and then we reorganize. What we're going to do is we're going to put that on hold and continue to move forward with Andy Rothman as president and Kim Marie Graham as vice president. We talked about that as a board and felt the need to continue that over the course of this shelter in place order or school closure. As soon as the all clear is given, be it the election slated in June or at our next face-to-face meeting, then we can look to reorganize and re-elect those officers in that role of president and vice president. The second one is, as Andy mentioned, reference to public participation at board meetings. We've done a couple things to be able to try to increase communication in a two-way format. Not only the work that our communications department does in pushing information out via social media or the amount of information on our website or in quick news or individual emails, but putting that Let's Talk portal in place to be able to navigate or kind of steer families and community members and teachers and students through that portal regarding questions that might arise during this period of pandemic. We're continuing to explore how best to allow for public comment and participation. And as you've probably noticed, even over the last 4 or 5 weeks, video conferencing platforms have actually added various pieces to their environments to allow for more participation and various bells and whistles, so to speak. And so we're going to continue to explore that and how we can certainly pull in our public into our conversations in a virtual environment, whether it's to submit questions earlier or comments by a certain deadline, or perhaps even leverage kind of a waiting room area in Zoom for us to be able to pull people into our virtual meeting and have that public comment shared in that manner. So we were having some conversations about that even earlier this afternoon. But for the time being, suspending those two pieces, those policies and those specific language items, line items within those policies until we have either a solution or the all clear provided in terms of that reorganization piece. So that's the recommendation this evening, Mr. Rothman.
The biggest thing to note with public participation is you've provided additional ways for the public to communicate, and always on our website, there's always been the list of all of our email addresses too, if anyone wants to email a board member about anything. So we definitely want that feedback from the community still. It's just difficult in the circumstances to do it in this type of setting. So I believe at this point, then we're ready for a motion.
I move the board suspend the portion of policy BCA that addresses the election of the president and vice president, the portion of policy BDDH that addresses the comment.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I guess I'd just like to say we have a policy that to fulfill right now. And we want to get that suspension lifted soon.
We had a hard time hearing that, David.
Sorry, I think I had a connection issue here, but I just appreciate the fact that rather than ignoring the policy altogether, that you've acknowledged that it exists, but we need to suspend it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We heard you that time. Appreciate that.
Anyone else? Seeing and hearing nothing, I think we're ready for a vote then.
AJ? And everyone is muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Scott?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Kim Marie?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, we will move on to unfinished business then. A topic we've been discussing for some time with our study session and at our last meeting in March, the 2020-2021 compensation plan. Dr.
So yeah, as you mentioned, we've had this item on here for some time now. Typically each year we would be at a point in which we would be recommending a proposal that then would fold into this year's budget, and contracts and employment would be adjusted accordingly. At this point, we're still going to hold on that. You heard information during the finance report as far as withholdings for this year, still waiting to get the best information to be able to plug into our budget in terms of our revenue outlook. We did, since the last time we met at our study session, Dr. Vogelaar and Cindy had an opportunity to convene with Team Liberty, as well as the Administrative Salary and Welfare Committee. So wanted to turn it over to Dr. Vogelaar to relay kind of the feedback that he received during those two engagements.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. Yeah, we met on the 9th for Team Liberty, and then the following week we had a meeting with the Administrative Salary and Welfare Committee. Both of those were via Zoom, and the central item on the agenda was this topic. The feedback that we received, and everybody really, I think, did a phenomenal job trying to brainstorm ways to capture savings, recognizing that that we may be in a recession type environment in the coming years that might even rival what we saw in 2008. So the request was to focus on recouping savings in the fall when there's a better financial picture, by focusing on changes to our health insurance that would actually create a little larger savings than what would be created by modifying the compensation study. So the request is that everything that was presented on March 24th would be adopted without modification, recognizing that that probably won't happen in tonight's meeting, but would need to happen either in May or June when there's a better budget picture. But then focus more specifically in the fall when we have our insurance renewal. There are some things that we do currently with our district subsidized portion of the premium benefits. Right now it's tethered to what's known as the $500 deductible EPO. And by tethering that to the $1,500 deductible EPO, it creates cost savings in plan year 21, which is January through December, of about $660,000. That's based on our current premium rates. And that would be realized over 2 fiscal years, since our plan year follows a calendar year, and our fiscal year follows the July to June cycle. So 330,000 of that savings would come in FY21, 330,000 would come in FY22, again, based on current premium rates. This would also create a situation where the contribution to the health savings account would be adjusted. Right now, it's based on that difference in premium between what we pay for the $500 deductible and what the cost of premium is for the high deductible healthcare plan. And that's what generates that little more than $1,400, $1,455 of contribution to health savings accounts. So if you tether that premium to the $1,500 EPO, then that contribution to the health savings account becomes just under $1,100 annually. We wouldn't do away with the $500 deductible EPO. That would still be available to people who wanted to buy up to that. It would just cost just under $31 a month, again, based on current premium rates, $31 a month to buy up to stay in that $500 deductible EPO, but most everybody would go to the $1,500 one. The $1,500 one is not a high deductible healthcare plan, so there's cost sharing up to that $1,500 max. It's not that the people on that plan don't pay 100% of everything until the $1,500 is met, like they would in the qualified high deductible plan. Then the other ideas that came up was if we need to realize more savings, to do that through maybe adjusting the phase 3 or phase 4 implementation of CBIZ instead of doing anything with the phase 2. And that's just because the CBIZ recommendation when we did the compensation study was recommended to be implemented immediately. We broke it into a 4-year phase in just to make it more affordable for the district. So the thought of delaying that to a 5-year, 6-year, 7-year implementation was obviously undesirable for those who are impacted most significantly by the delay of that phase in. Probably the single salary schedule that would be impacted most by delaying the CBIZ phase in would be the classified salary schedule. Of course, they also recognize the prioritization that the district would be making on trying to create savings through natural attrition, not backfilling positions when people leave, if it is possible to accomplish that, that would be a goal or desire as well. And all of this obviously to avoid what we had to go through in 2008, where we froze the salary schedule and we engaged in 3 levels of reductions in force where probationary teachers were non-renewed due to the financial condition of the district. So that's a summary of the Team Liberty meeting, what was shared with the Administrative Salary and Welfare Committee as well. And they agreed with that. I summarized all of that in a memo and gave that to Dr. Tucker and have just orally summarized it here for you. Any questions?
Anything to add, Cindy, before we open it up for questions?
I think he's covered it all pretty well.
Okay. The only thing I would tie back to the finance report in terms of the budget outlook, we'll have an opportunity to speak to this as well at our study session in May, and certainly the desire to bring forward and stay on track with that statutory timeline of a draft budget document to the board in May, knowing that we'll get that much better information in June as well. So there's a lot of incomplete pieces as this continues to move forward. So questions of Dr. Vogelaar regarding the salary recommendation at this point?
Yeah, just a reminder of when does the salary, if we're going, whatever changes we're going to make, have to be finalized?
That's a great question, and some districts do it differently. Obviously, we have pay cycles that begin at the start of the fiscal year, so the 25th of July. I think there's some classified payroll dates that are in the middle of July, after a couple of weeks in July. So ideally, you don't want to start those payrolls on an old salary schedule and then make an adjustment and create some retro pay situations. You can do that. There's certainly nothing that prohibits you from doing that if that's in the best interest of the district moving forward. But typically we make the decision in April, roll out contract amendments while school is still in session. Of course, school is not physically in session, and people in this electronic environment can get contract amendments even through the summer. So a decision in May or even one in June when we finalize the budget still allows us to execute in a time frame that would not cause problems for the payroll department to execute whatever the final decision is.
What other questions do we have on this topic? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Vogelaar and Cindy.
So that will remain unfinished and be addressed again at future meetings. That concludes our unfinished business for tonight. We're on to our new business under 7.01. Looks like we have a emergency repair that had to be taken care of, and we've got a recommended motion to approve that emergency repair work. Is that right?
We do, and Mr. Anderson can speak to that emergency repair very briefly. So.
Yeah, sure. Real brief. Here in the DAC, the server is on the second floor, and cooling that room is it's critically important. And we had an issue with one of the units, and so we had to kind of jump on that pretty quick. We didn't want that to fail. And that's how we made that repair under the emergency provision within board policy.
Just out of curiosity, do we know the final cost on that?
No, I'm not sure. I think I saw the front end of that. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. We'd certainly look into that and let you know. We have been kind of working that system in there for some time. It's been on our capital plan to completely replace the units in there that serve that space. So we've been kind of milking the system for a couple of years. So that's probably a next year. If not this coming summer, we'll replace that. But I can certainly look at what the cost was to take care of that one repair.
If no other questions, then I'm ready for someone to make a motion.
I move the board approve the ITS Solutions emergency repair work.
Second.
Discussion. Seeing and hearing nothing, ready for a vote, please.
AJ,
Yes.
thank you. Scott,
Yes. Yes.
David,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kim Marie,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right. And that's the only thing we have under new business this evening then. So that moves us to 8.01 upcoming meetings. The next meeting will be on May 5th for our study session. Obviously, we'll be in this type of setting again. May 19th, I would say the location TA. We'll figure out what's going on as that date approaches, but that's the next regular board meeting. And then the other dates for June there are listed. Anyone have any questions or comments about the meeting schedule? Seeing none, does anyone have any board remarks? Hearing nothing, I am ready for a motion to adjourn to closed. Anyone?
I move the board adjourn.
I move the board adjourn to,
including any record or vote for the purpose of discussing legal privilege communications with district attorneys and personnel as provided by law, section 610.021, subsections 1, 3, 13, RSMO.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Ready for a vote, please.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Angie,
yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kim Marie,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, we will adjourn to closed and everyone leaves this meeting, and then we've been given a different meeting code for the closed session, correct?
Correct.
All right, we'll see everyone there in a moment. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.